Why they sound low like that? Oh. Hey, good evening. I am Waukesha Howe, Community Champion here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we are coming with another conversation. And this particular conversation today is going to be around the school board role. Like, what do they do? What should we come to them for? How can we help them, etc. So I have my lovely co-host, Miss Sherelle. I also have two current board members. This is really good because they're actually doing the work right now. It's really good to hear from them and see what it is they do and how we can support them. So I have Miss Tamara Jones and I have Miss Erika Mitchell. So, ladies, if you don't mind, no particular order, could you guys tell us a little bit about yourself?
Do you
Well,
want to go first?
sure. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, my name is Erika Mitchell. I'm a current school board member for District 5. That's Northwest Atlanta, parts of Southwest Atlanta. Um, I'm a parent, um, and I'm a community member. And I've lived in the Collier Heights area about 17 years, born and raised here in the city of Atlanta. Um, and my passion is to ensure as a community leader or even in my current role as a school board member and as a parent that every child reach their full potential and that we give them the tools and the skills so that they can reach their full potential and be successful in life. And what does that look like? It looks differently in different parts of the city, um, because it has to be customized to fit the unique needs of the students and the people that you serve. I am currently running for reelection to continue to serve the students and families of the areas that I am representing, but also the city as a whole. When I'm not doing school board work, I enjoy playing golf and taking my kids to Girl Scouts, basketball, volleyball, violin, you name it. They keep me busy on the weekends. I think I work more on the weekends than I do during the weekdays. But that's mommy duties. That's what it means to be a parent. So
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
a little bit about me.
So Erica and I both, you know, are parents in the APS system. So we share that experience. So we are at the end of the day, not just board members, but we're also end users of the school system. And, we experience the ins and outs, what's working, what's not working. And, I've done that, like Erica, it's been a while. I have been a parent in APS for this is my 17th year. So I've seen a lot of superintendents. I have seen a lot of things change, a lot of things not change. But, you know, there is so much to be gained from, the experience of parents and the experience of people who have had both successes and frustrations, within the system. And, one of the things that Eric and I both work on, and I really appreciate her so much for mentoring me, as a more experienced board member, is, trying to enact policy that benefits all children in the system. And I really also appreciate her because we're both on the board development committee, and you're reaching out and making sure that we're trying to unite the city, connect people across clusters, connect people across the district, is going to be the key to making this district a huge success, which I really think it could be. But the politics of division that we've had over the years, I think COVID and the internet and all that kind of stuff have pushed aside a little bit, and people are finding each other all across the district. And I really want to promote that. And I know Erica does too. Just try to get us all working together, rowing in the same direction and taking ownership of all the kids overall, all the district.
So with that, tell me a little bit, or let the community understand, what is it that you do day to day? What is a normal day? We'll have a 2:30 board meeting, a 5:30 board meeting. Sometimes we'll have a board meeting probably like at 10. So can either one of you guys walk us through, like, what do that look like? How much time do that require from you guys?
Wow. What does that day-to-day looks like? Okay, so let's talk about the pre-work that has to be done before we get to the board meeting, the work session, the special call meetings. One of the practices that's been in place since I've been a board member is that we meet with the superintendent once a month, and we call it our one-on-ones. Within those one-on-ones, we discuss the agenda. The agenda is set by the board chair, vice chair, and the superintendent. We normally don't see the agenda until they send out a draft. We receive that draft, and that's when I said that's when the pre-work begins. So everything that's on that agenda, we'll look at it, have time to discuss how we get a packet. And well, we used to get a printout packet, but now since it's on Assembly, we log on and we pull down the information, and we have an opportunity to look over the information that we're presented with, which is on the agenda, prior to meeting with the superintendent. Then when we meet with the superintendent, so this is another day meeting with the superintendent. So we doing the pre-work. So that's it depends on how many days it takes the board members to go through. Now we are in our one-on-ones, which is another day with our superintendent. Then we have the opportunity to discuss the agenda, consent agenda, anything that's on, any items that are on that agenda with the superintendent. We ask questions, we submit questions to get a little bit more information on if there's some clarity or concerns, or just kind of want to see a different approach or recommendation. So it's basically our time to really just have those deep conversation about what is on the agenda. And if there's some items that we disagree on, we're able to have the conversation about it. We want items removed, and that takes a full board conversation to happen. So once you do that with the superintendent, the following week we go into what we call our board work session. And in our board work session is the opportunity, and this is why I say two things to happen, for the superintendent to have answered the questions regarding the presentations on the work session prior to the work session. Or if you don't receive that feedback before the work session, what happens is the board members end up asking those questions in the work session. So that's two different things that can happen. Either you get the answers before, or you ask the questions in the work session. And then the third thing is, if none of those happen, then what you have is what I call your political grandstanding. I'm gonna say it, Tamara, you don't have to. I would never put you on the line with that. And then that's where it gets to just that is not really pinpointed to student outcomes. Okay, so then once you finish your work session, we roll into executive session to discuss any human resource personnel, student discipline, any litigation that we're in. And that's during the time that we're able to take a quick break, but to really get in to see exactly what's going on. Now I've asked for what we call a legal update monthly, just so we know where we are as a board with what is happening with settlements, with litigation, with whatever it might be, because I think it's important for us to know as board members versus finding out in the street. So we do have that opportunity to get an update, or any housekeeping things that we need to do as a board, whether it's conferences, just updating us on our board calendar, what's taking place. And then after that, we go into what we call our community meeting, right? So that's right around 6 o'clock when public comment starts. Public comment, what we call board recognitions, board chair remarks, superintendent remarks, and then we dive into voting on the consent agenda or any financial consents policy or any recommendations that come out of executive session. So that's typically what it looks like on that day. On the board day, it's a work session at 2:30, which we have our progress monitoring report on our goals and guardrails, but then board members are able to request presentations during that time. And again, if in our one-on-ones, the superintendent gets the answers to those questions that we have around the work session or agenda items, then again, those are done prior to. But if not, either you're going to ask them those questions in the work session, you're going to ask those questions during the legislative meeting in the board, and that's kind of how it looks. So 2:30 work session, break at 5 o'clock for executive session. 6 o'clock is when your board meeting legislative part starts until we end. Sometimes we can wrap up 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I've been there late as 11 o'clock, but that's what it looks like with the board day. And then you go into what we have committee meetings, which is normally around the third Thursday of each month. Depending on our schedules, try to keep everything together. So if you chair a committee, if you're on the committee, you have the opportunity to do work in that committee. And the committees are maybe an hour and a half, hour or an hour and a half, depending on what is on the agenda. And then we have, like you asked about, the special call meetings. Special call meetings happen when there's something that's pending and we don't and we have to come back to meet to discuss it or to do a vote. So it's either one for discussion or vote, depending on what the situation is. We have to be called back in, and so anytime we meet as a full board, we have to notice it. So the public will always know when we have to meet as a board. So that's the part that's transparent. So we're not meeting without you all knowing, but when there's a situation where we may have some litigation going on and it calls for action right away from the board, we have to have a special call meeting to take care of that. If it's something that doesn't require action and it requires a board consensus or just for us to know exactly what is taking place, then we have to call a special call meeting, and it'll probably say no action taken because it probably is a discussion or report out. So that's what that looks like, and that can be anytime. You just never know, depending on what is happening and what's transpiring within our district. So I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit, Tamara, but I know that was a lot. I know I'm long-winded.
Yeah, that
was.
And so to that point, how many hours would that require? Just one day? How many hours do you look at? Because I don't been to those 10:30 meetings where I'm like, y'all not done? Because something will be a big topic of discussion, and possibly the community care a lot about. So how many hours you think that requires a day?
I can jump in there a little bit because Erika has been very thorough, about, what, the required board meetings are and the time that's involved. There are also retreats that happen every month. So we'll have retreats around facilities, we'll have retreats around budget, we'll have, retreats around, equity and, just, board development and all sorts of things. This is not a very part-time job. It's a very full-time part-time job. There's a lot required. And then on top of that, there are all of the training sessions, going to the conferences for the Georgia School Boards Association. Erika is involved with CUBE, Great City Schools. We have a lot of, training, which is good. You have your board members very well trained. I really appreciated what Erika was saying about political grandstanding, because, what she mentioned, about, trying to take care of things beforehand when you talk to the superintendent, when you have your one-on-ones, trying to get things cleared up, and trying to work together efficiently and effectively as a board. what you're trying to do is avoid that type of political grandstanding on the dais, because that usually is not, that's a kind of a last resort, or it's something that people use to try to, make notoriety for themselves. And, that's what we're trying to avoid by having the processes that we do. And I really appreciate Erika walking through all of that, minutia of, how we do things behind the scenes before we have the meeting, because we're trying not to be, the school boards that are all across the country that are having those fireworks on the dais. So yeah, I think we do work together fairly well, and it's that kind of discipline behind the scenes that makes it not be a show, for lack of a better word, when we get to a board meeting.
So I want to first I want to say kudos to you guys, because both of you guys was able to bring forth a literacy policy that's coming up, and maybe it's coming up for a vote next month, or is it this month?
First read on the 6th.
Okay. I appreciate that, because we know that's a long time coming. But what did it take? How can we help you guys move something along faster? Like, we know literacy here. I ain't even got to say the numbers because y'all see them daily, probably deeper than we even know. What did it take to bring a policy that's well needed forward? And how can the community help you guys?
Erika, if I could, what we encountered when we first started to propose this literacy policy was a little bit of hesitation about whether or not that was the role of the board, right? And so what we had to do is go seek experts in the field. So we worked with, the Atlanta Speech School. I consulted, and Erika was on the phone call with Kasim Weaver, out in Oakland, California, who's now, a big movie star from the Right to Read movie, where we really tried to dig down into whether or not this is a board policy, issue, or whether it's just solely the administration. And we concluded that it definitely is a board policy. And so it is a slower process. Erika helped me out with this a lot in trying to convince our colleagues on the board that yes, this is necessary. We need to pass a board policy. We can't just completely turn it over to the administration. And I leaned heavily on Erika's vast experience, crafting policy. She did the, trauma-informed policy, the human trafficking, the, restorative practices, and, really, studied at her knee, as she moved forward with this policy. And I'm proud of where we've wound up, but she knows, and she can tell you that it has not been without pushback. People saying, yeah, it's not the board's job. Yes, it is. So I'll let Erika take over.
And I do hear that a lot, Erika. If you want to respond, it's fine. I do hear what's the board role and what's the superintendent role. So correct me if I'm wrong. We the people elect you guys, and we're your boss. You guys pick a superintendent, which you are their boss, and then the superintendent hires, staff member and people to work within the school. Is that how the pyramid goes?
Yes, with accountability. And I just want to say thank you, Tamara, for laying that out, because when we well, first of all, when Tamara said, listen, I was down the hill on the literacy policy, and I said, you know what? I'm right there with you. Let me tell you, we know what is happening, what's not happening in our schools, okay? And we left it up to the administration for how many decades? So now it's down the board.
At least 20 years. At least 20 years. Yeah.
And we still haven't seen any improvement, right? So now it's like, okay, as school board members, the first thing it says in our charter our charter, our governance charter that is developed by the state, that we are expected to develop policy. Not wordsmith policy, develop policy. We are policy makers. That's why it's very important for continuing education or education around how to write educational policy. Because you have the state law, let me just back up. You have the federal law, the state law, and then you have the local school district policy. That is very important. Very important. And so think about vision that Board Member Jones had and just want to see it through. I was like, I'm right there with you, because I know what the data looks like in my schools too. And I know what the data looks like all over the district. And I know if you go in the jails, you will see that data as well. Let's just be honest. And we have a serious issue if we don't address it from the board on down. To go back to your question, Washika. I'm sorry, Wakisha. I'm sorry, I have a cousin named Washika too, by the way. So I get y'all confused sometimes. I just want to say that. So please don't hold it against me, because I call Wakisha, I call Washika. Oh my God. But anyway, to go back to your question regarding who holds us accountable, it's the people who elect us that holds us accountable. And there's another part to that. As we are elected school board members, we are supposed to bring the voices and the values of the community and the parents to the board table, because that's who we represent. So when you talk about accountability, yes, the board members are held accountable to the people who elect us, which are the people that are the families, the students, parents, community members, any type of stakeholders. Those are the people we report to. Those are the people who hold us accountable. Those are the people that we bring, again, their voices and value to the board table and advocate for what you all need. And also me as a parent, because I throw myself in there, even though I'm a board member, I'm a mother. So my day-to-day experience, I'm advocating for parents, because I'm a parent. And that's kind of how it works. And then from there, we hire superintendents that report the board, not one board member, all 9 board members. And every district is unique, and we work with the superintendent on the things that are very unique to our district, but we work with the superintendent as a governing body as a whole on what Atlanta, the children in Atlanta needs, and the families as a whole too. So the accountability for school board members comes from our stakeholders, our students, our families, our parents, community members. And then also, I will say around the policy. Sorry.
Yes. No, you was. I wanted to let you ask a question, Miss Sherelle. I didn't know if you was done, Erika, because you was going in and out just a little bit.
Well, you know what?
Okay.
But to join in on to ask, she was talking about a number of things that that were important to the community in identifying roles. So I want to go back, and can you tell the community how many members is on or make up a board? And tell me the members that make up the board, the number, and what offices does the members hold?
Okay, so with Atlanta Public Schools School Board, or Atlanta Board of Education, we have 9 members that are composed of 6 district members and 3 at-large members. District 1 through 6 have a at-large board member that's I guess the word is appointed to them. So I give you an example. Board Member Jones live in the Midtown cluster, and she also covers Midtown Washington, and I believe a little bit of Carver as the at-large person that area that she's appointed to, but not limited to the entire city of Atlanta. So, like Jessica.
Oh,
I think she fell
did we
off.
lose her?
Oh, there she go.
Oh, she's coming back up.
I lost you. Okay.
But yes, each of the at-large represents, 2 school board districts and therefore 4 council districts. So I live, seat 7 is school board districts 1 and 2. So council districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. So.
And so how many schools are in the Atlanta public school system that the board has to govern? Well, I should say that they're responsible for writing policy as relates to the schools itself.
I believe we have 87 and 96 total. I believe 87 traditional, right? 97 schools are, well, not 97 separate, but overall 97, and that's including, I believe, charter and also some of our like adult ed, adult education, and some other different types of schools in that component as well. But I can double check.
Our alternative schools,
yes,
are part of that. So, North Metro, Hank Aaron,
yeah,
right.
So you mentioned earlier that one of the roles is to write policy, and that you had some challenges in writing policy as relates to what the board was formed for, which is actually educating students. And we know that there's a contract from the Atlanta public school system to the state of Georgia that says that we have the ability to educate students. So I want to help the community to understand the importance of this literacy policy.
So I don't know if you want to chime in, Tamara, because I know it was
sure.
A lot of it was your vision. But go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So this, like Erika said, this is one of those hills I'm willing to die on. And policy shapes how the administration approaches execution. And there's a fine line between policy or direction and execution. And, often I have felt that, there has been a reluctance on the part of people in policy to really try to direct, administration in respect to how they develop process and regulations, because it's viewed as not our job. But because we've had so many kids, we've had a couple of generations now, kids, that 2/3 of our kids have not been proficient in reading. This is before the pandemic, so we can't blame the pandemic. It's not okay, and we have to step up as board members to frame the problem and to provide guidance, to the administration. And I think that there's just some differences in opinion about, how far the board can go. But I'm really, right now, Erika knows it's taken a year and a half, working on this, for, the majority of the board to get on board with the fact that this is a board thing.
Okay.
And I'll let Erika finish because she's been a board member longer than me.
I will say this: the difference in that when I look at leadership from 2 superintendents, I can go across the line to the city of Marietta where they do not have a literacy policy, but the superintendent said, "No, this is what we're going to do. and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to roll it out, and we're going to partner, we're going to do this because this is important to me, it's important to the students. That's the difference in leadership. At APS, we have to have a policy. Because one of the things I would tell you as an incoming board member and just being newly elected, I remember one of the employees, we were at a meeting at Beecher Hills, and it was a facilities meeting because they were getting ready to renovate Beecher Hills, and I knew nothing about it because I'm just getting in as a board member. So I said, let me come and just listen because I kind of wanted to know what was happening. Really wanted to see what the community input was and how they felt about things, and want to make sure they got what they needed when we talk about equity. And one of the people who is no longer with us passed away in the facility department. I asked a question about the door, and this was during the time where we had a couple of shootings that happened, and I asked about I've been hearing some people talking about what is it called, bulletproof doors, so they couldn't shoot through the doors in the classroom. And he looked at me and said, when it becomes a board policy, that's when it happened. And I said, oh, okay. That was my first lesson in APS. If it's not a policy, they're not doing it. I said, okay. So from there on out, I thought about it because, I asked to be on policy committee, and I would just sit in policy committee, and we would just, see a lot of wordsmithing going on. And I was like, wow, I mean, when we're going to write policy? I'm like excited about writing policy, and we wasn't writing any. And I was like, I don't understand. And then I was told where our board is to take the recommendation and tweak it, and that's it. And I was like, no, I wasn't taught that, I was told that we develop policy, we write policy, we are policy makers. And no, that's not how the charter is interpreted. I say, yes, it is. That's what it says, and that's what we do. And it was just like ongoing, what you can't do, what you shouldn't be doing versus what we should be doing, and how we should be held accountable, and what we should be writing policy to serve students. And I was just like, you know what, if I by myself trying to figure this out, because my thing was, when you write policy to serve students, that's when you see the student outcome changes, right? If you write punitive policy, that's when you create the barriers for those students. And I was trying to figure out why we had so many barriers, because it's the way our policies was written. And so you have to go back and change those policies and look at it in the lens of, how does this serve students? What type of student outcomes do we want from this policy? And then you get halfway there. But when we don't have the conversations and we don't do it, and then we complain about, oh, why this isn't happening and these barriers, then that creates more issues and problems. And it has always been a pushback on a policy committee. And I always feel like sometimes people are afraid of what they don't know. And that's why it takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. You just can't put words on the paper and say, I have your policy. You have to do the research behind it. You have to have the evidence, the facts, the data, the outcomes, the metrics, all these different components to establish support for why this policy is important. And that's what should be happening in our policy committee and our work sessions with policy, but it's not. And that's one of the things I would like to change moving forward, to really have a comprehensive policy committee, because that's one of the most important things that we do outside of hiring a superintendent and approving a budget, is policy, because that's going to direct the day-to-day of the district, direct the day-to-day. That's all I said, direct. I didn't say anything about going into school and telling people what to do. I said it established the day-to-day directive, the guidance, the structure on what should be happening, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. It tells you what needs to be done. And that's really the true importance of educational policy.
So what Erika inherited when she got on the board was a long-standing attitude about what the board's role in policy was or was not, and it was a very diminished role. It very much favored, the autonomy of the superintendent. And I believe in, giving the superintendent as much latitude, as possible, because we can't micromanage. But she has experienced this, as, a board member, being on longer than me, um, about some of the handcuffs that people have tried to put on the board as far as policy creators. And I really appreciate learning from her.
Let me tell you something. I noticed that word micromanage. I heard that a lot. And from me just learning and me listening, it sounds like people just have had free will to be creative and innovative. We've heard those terms, for the last 20 years. But we haven't had nothing accomplished because, to your point, it ain't no policy, so we ain't got to do it. And to Erika's point, if you go over to another county, it's not their policy, but we care about our students enough to make sure it get done. So I really do appreciate that being lifted up. And I think that the community has to be more accountable to the people that we elect, to let them know we want some policies that'll help. Now, to that policy about safety, school safety is, a really serious issue. I just heard about a gun being in a school last week.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I wanted to ask you guys about. We hear things and then it almost like it disappeared, like it never happened, right? We've been seeing it for the last couple of years, and I don't mind damage control, but at least let us, the community, be aware of what's happening so we guys can partner with you all. If a policy need to be put in place for certain things, we can help be supportive of that. Because we're seeing the time that we're living in, and we want our teachers and our students to feel safe and really be in a thriving, loving environment. But things are so different now, and there's so much stuff happening. And it's like, the communication, we don't see it. Now, I was looking at the safety town hall meetings. And I gotta lift this up because nobody ever talk about this. We have families in Ava, right? Those families rarely get to be engaged with a lot of the school activity, even though they are attached to the school. And so even with the safety meeting, I noticed that if you were a family, like I have nieces and nephews in Ava, my sister, because she's at work, she's not able to tap in, or she can't go back and rewatch. Now, some schools did screen theirs, but she wasn't able to go back and see what was the conversation like. What I need to be asking about, what I need to be advocating for when it comes to safety. And I wish they would do a better job with bridging that gap communication, and just making sure families, whether you're in the building or online, or a combination of both, there's a policy that makes sure all of these families are included, because it almost feel like Ava was, it been around for a long time, but it like checking on its own school now. And I don't see a way that, and I try to be engaged for my sister when she's not there, but I don't see a way that she can be engaged because it's so separate. And I know it ain't no policy around, but stuff like safety, and different things around the school, they need to know about. And so however we can help you guys with that, please let me know. Erica, I wanted to ask you this because you did a lot of great work around trafficking, human trafficking. I don't know if you guys are aware, Senator Warnock just came out almost like 72 hours ago, probably less than that. He just talked about foster children, foster kids here in the city of Atlanta. We know a lot of them go through that trauma. I took that training before, so that they have all these different challenges, and we know some probably be special needs. And it's like,
Yeah.
we learned that 1,700, this is in the state of Georgia, so Atlanta don't have to feel bad. 1,700 kids are missing. They're just, we don't know where they at, honestly. This is what he said, and they're going to try to figure out what they can do. But here's the thing. Children's supposed to be in school. I think that's the state law.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we create a policy that makes sure we know where these babies are? And they don't get caught up, because I went and looked at some past videos, and they was talking about how some of them live in the defects building, some of them live, in a group home, shelters, they
Yeah.
were staying in hotels. I mean, I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
nobody noticed, but that sound like they fall under the McKinney Veto Act. It's homeless. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what can we do to make sure that these babies are protected? Because that's one population that you never really hear anyone talk about. Special
Mm-hmm.
education is one, and
Mm-hmm.
then the foster kids is another one. Is there
Mm-hmm.
any type of policy that can make, on top of, I won't say on top, we know we got the federal laws already, but is there any policy to help, just wrap our arms around
Mm-hmm.
those babies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that will fall on the student support services. If we were to look and see what do we have existing supports in policy to help those students that are foster students. I know we have process and protocols and regulations, but when we come from a policy standpoint, that's more of a firm direction and what we need to do as a district to ensure that is happening and that is consistent with our practice. There is opportunity to have additional conversations and to do research around that. I can't say if we need one or maybe tighten up our regulations or process protocol, but I'll be happy to look into that. I know our foster students are another vulnerable population within our city and our state. I know their foster students are very high in being trafficked. I do know that from my research and my studies within how do we protect all our students, and they fall in that bucket on being trafficked because they've been moved around from house to house, home to home, place to place. There's no stability. There's a couple of uh, there's two facilities in my district. The covered what is it? The Covenant House. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right.
Yeah, Covenant House. Yeah.
Covenant House is northwest Atlanta, probably over Johnson Road is on Johnson Road and Marietta at the corner. I work with them sometimes, and there's another one that's over here off of near Jackson Memorial. And I work with them sometimes, and they run out of space. They run out of space, and we don't have enough people who have the passion to start a organization or a nonprofit and get a building and get a space, and then to be able to keep them there. That's the opportunity. That's the opportunity. That's a really, really big opportunity to look into. Even when we talk about facilities, right? We wanted teacher housing, we want, staff housing. What does it look like for student housing for foster kids? That's something to think about. That is
No,
something to think about.
that is a great
Mhm.
idea, Erica, because, when we start to talk about what we do with these properties, particularly the 8 ones that we're, looking at, we can work with the community. And if that is a need, for the community where these particular properties are located, we can explore that. And that's another reason why I'm really happy about, the process that our facilities department has put forward about how to press our surplus properties into service for the public good. And, thank you, Erica. We should raise that issue as well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
this,
go ahead.
this is Patricia. I want to jump in. Um, you guys mentioned something about policy and the board job. One of the responsibilities that you're charged with is writing policy.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Sherelle,
Miss Sherelle, you're breaking up.
correct, is you're creating policy that would address the needs of students. Is that correct?
That's what policies should be doing.
Okay.
Should
So
be. Yes.
I am at awe to hear you say, and not you in particular, but for it to be said that we're creating policy to address students who may be in the foster system or who may be homeless and come up under federal law for protection. But now it seems like we're at the back end of writing policy that would affect children from that are in school when we've been in the business of educating students for the longest. So it's kind of concerning to me that we're behind the 8 ball. We're supposed to be educating students, and I know the board job is to write policy as relates to how that's get done, what it looks like. But then you're telling me, well, we're having challenges with people understanding that a literacy policy needs to be there when we have for 20 years or more not been educating students well enough to compete in their city or in their state. So I'm troubled, and I'm bringing this up because we got these board races, right? And election is early voting is going on right now. Election day is November 6th, and so I want the community to understand that it is important. It is important to elect, to vote for a person who has an understanding of what is necessary and needed for students in order for them to be successful in the school system. So, if you can help us understand, we know that you hired the superintendent, but what will you be looking for so that we can address this human trafficking? We can address homelessness. We can address the students that are in GNET schools. So we can address the students that are in as a board member the next time around.
Yeah, I a little bit of you had cut off, and I got board member next time around. So I didn't hear.
My statement to you is I'm just so concerned that the community doesn't know the importance, or may not be they may be disenfranchised. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And so the importance of electing a board member who has knowledge of what will be necessary in order to address the needs of students while they're in the Atlanta public school system. So my question to you is, or to the both, since we've had people that we invited, but for some reason, for one reason or the other, is not present. So I'm going to ask the two of you, what will you be looking for as relates to a superintendent in order to address the unique needs of the student in the city of Atlanta?
First of all, do they understand policy? When you look at a new superintendent, you got to look at what qualifies them to be superintendent. What have they done in their past jobs or career that we can look back on to see how they improve student outcomes? And what does that track record looks like? And do they understand what it is to be a teacher, assistant principal, a principal, an administrator? Like, all those areas are so important, because as a superintendent, you make a high level decision, but it has to be based on the knowledge of that classroom teacher, to that special education teacher, to the principal, to assistant principal, and on and on and on. PE teacher. You got to know all the moving pieces of what is happening in the schools. And if you haven't been in the schools, I don't know how you're gonna make a high level decision. So I look for someone who's in the schools day to day. When they go do a tour, they said, you know what? Let me go to your special education classes. Because so many tours I've been on, not one superintendent has asked that question. But Danielle Battle. I'm sorry, Dr. Battle. Let me see the lowest performing students in your school. Don't show me what you want me to see to think, oh, everything's good. Let me see what needs to be improved so we can work together as a administration with the schools to improve those situations and outcomes for those students, and also lifting the ones that are excelling, and also building the ones up that are at average or below average. That's what a true superintendent does. And they stay out of politics. That's another thing. Because your job is not to be writing statements, being pressured to do anything else but run that district. And I think what I've seen in Dr. Battle is a true leader, a true servant superintendent, someone who understands what it takes to do the things that needs to be done to improve student outcomes for all our students, no matter what side of town you live on. It don't matter if your parents speak English or not. It don't matter if your parents are rich or poor or middle class. It don't matter. Every child deserves a quality education. And that's the type of leader that I want. And that's what I see in Dr. Battle. Now, Dr. Battle only has 10 months with APS. I understand that. The next superintendent gonna have some big shoes to fill, but they're gonna have to get their hands dirty and get to work. And it's not showboating around this city with other people. It's being in the schools. It's doing the work. It's getting things done. Like if I want the best for my kids, I want the best for everyone else's children too. And it doesn't happen if we all don't work together. And we have to work in partnership with the superintendent. And the superintendent has to understand the unique needs of the district, the different districts, and the schools, and the parents, and the families, and the students. And that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Erika.
Okay.
Because this is something that, has been going on for a long time. We all know that we don't get enough money from the federal government to, serve our children who have needs. And I think that at least in the time that I've been in APS, there's been a reluctance from superintendents to really try to focus on that because they know that there's a money gap there. But that's not an excuse. We owe it, to all of the children who need us, to be able to meet their needs. And we can do that. There's not, yes, I understand the funding is not there, but when we do for those who need us the most, we benefit everyone else. And so that's one of the things that Erika and I have talked about with regard to the literacy policy. It's like, when you bring up the ones who have the most difficulty in reading, those same methods and protocols benefit every child. So, we're not taking anything away from somebody else to lift someone up. And I really hope that we can get to that level of conversation within this district where we don't view education as a zero sum, that we understand that everyone's success, helps everyone else. And, I really appreciate the focus, on our kids who need us the most.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and the tonight's conversation to the community is about the board's role, and so that's the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I want them to understand how important it is and how valuable it is to have board members who know what is required and needed for the board to guide the superintendent, so that she or he can then guide their staff, and then they can guide the children in the city of Atlanta. Because if you don't know how to identify a superintendent, then as a board member, the students are going to suffer. And so this is why I'm glad we're having the conversation about your role, because your role is important. It starts with you. It starts with you having a relationship with the community, which is why you're in districts and in and representing those districts and the sentiments of those districts, Even for people who don't have children in the district, they have what? An interest. It is valuable for a board member to be able to identify what is necessary and needed so that our city can grow, so that we can provide resources to the city, because that's the whole idea about educating. It wouldn't be a need to go to school. It's a requirement by law, right? And so with that being said, we have to make certain that we are educating them to the best of their abilities by law, because their law does govern, you know, students, which was odd that we saw student rights the other night. We were on another meeting. And so that's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because your role is really important. So the first thing I want to do, and I didn't do when I got on, I want to say thank you to the board members who accepted the invitation to come. The conversation is just that, a conversation. We're not here to put anybody on the spot, but to hopefully enlighten the community so they have a better understanding of what your role is, and then what the community's role is in electing somebody who can support what needs to happen in the city of Atlanta. So I want to say thank you for me personally. I've seen your work. You know, the work you've been doing has been wonderful, and it has been intentional, and that's what's necessary. I'm just a little bit taken back that it's taken this many years, and for me to go through the Atlanta public school system and to become a parent in the Atlanta public school system and have students to graduate from there, and then here we're talking about literacy in 2023. To me, your role is really important. It's vital, it's key that we find somebody who is going to lead the school system, to a better heights than what we've seen. We know, odd as it, odd and quiet as it kept, Gwinnett County was just on the news talking about, and they were in a board meeting talking about how, their numbers had dropped. But then when we see the city of Atlanta, oh, we don't have a problem. We don't have a problem. But when we see our data, and some of it is skewed and it's not authentic, some of it, but be that it may, we're okay with that. But what we do know is what we see is that the children are not learning. So I want you to understand from me that I understand that your role is important, and I want the community to know that your role in this particular fight is really important. Go out, people, and elect board members that have your interests at heart. If it's not your child, it is your nieces and nephews. It is your grandchildren. It is the children in your community. If your children are being educated in your community, they're not hanging out. So that's really important to have board members who know that policies are important to students. But I will challenge you to do this for me, and I'm talking about personally. When you're writing policies and as it relates to students, not making them so punitive, because the children who are homeless have challenges. The children who are in foster care have challenges. The children with students with disabilities have challenges. And so, but we find that they're penalized the most, and those children have the least amount of understanding as to why I'm being penalized with the challenges I'm facing on my own, and I don't even understand those. So I just want to say thank you, but I want the community to know how important your role is in identifying a board member that is going to be representative of your sentiments as relates to education and what you want to see in the city of Atlanta.
So, Ms. Sherrill, as we close out, I will just say that one of the things that Board Member Mitchell and I have been talking about is using, changing our attendance policy to address the very things that you were addressing, which are, what are the barriers to our students? And can we use our attendance policy and our absenteeism as a flag to trigger, tiers of intervention to remove those barriers, whether they are having to work, to support the family, having to take care of younger siblings, having, food insecurity or housing instability, or, whatever the case may be, we have to stop just policing absenteeism as truancy and really look at it as a fact-finding mission of how we can find out what the problems are and remove those barriers. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And just to follow up what Tamara said, we have something that I learned about in 2018, but I haven't had an opportunity to kind of get it all together. But looking at our homeless students and just students in general that might be in between households or whatever the situation is through the lens of poverty informed. And there's a policy around that. And I was just taken aback by a lot that I've read, how we make decisions without even looking at the situation of our families and our students. And that's one of the things I want to start championing and looking into. How do we develop a poverty informed policy? That's game changer right there. And it's out there. And I know the Dr. Beagle will be the best person to bring to really talk about that with our administration and board, so we can try to shift that mindset and be able to identify those opportunities and within our district to serve those students as well.
Well, I thank you both for that, because to all of y'all point, a lot of kids are punished. I know a family right now, to that point, they have to take care of a younger brother and sister. Mom is at work. She has 2 jobs. They still got to try to do their schoolwork and manage life. Because life is life right now. Without a shadow of a doubt. And so, um, if they can't turn on their camera, if they can't make it to school on time because they was tired, they stayed up with a younger sibling last night until mom got home. These are real life things, and I'm not asking the school system to be all, but I will say I know a lot of people who work within a system understands, because they come from these backgrounds. A lot of them, and this ain't even necessarily the board members, these are the people in the day-to-day operation. They understand because they came from these backgrounds of single mom, dad, grandparents. They lived in poverty. I've heard some of the stories. I've seen a lot of people talk about it. So it is hard to see when people don't understand. I'll give you a good example. Me and Miss Sherelle talked about this in the past. During COVID, we had a whole bunch of technology issues. That's when we found out we don't have the internet we supposed to have, on different sides of town. And so a lot of kids was punished, and they were marked absent because they couldn't log on, they couldn't turn on their camera. Well, we found out, just talking, parents talking to each other, we found out a year or 2 later, that the devices that they gave us who didn't have internet was no good from the beginning. So and you see people celebrate this big win. Everybody have access. But a lot of times when we have this, it's like BS. And what we don't see behind the scenes is all the kids who was marked absent, or tardy because they didn't show up on camera on time, etc. But there are a lot of challenges in Atlanta. And Atlanta is growing. I see these big corporate meetings. Atlanta is growing, and the population, you would think of people living in poverty, would be shrinking because it's the Black Mecca and it's so much opportunity, but it's getting wider and wider, and it's reaching that missing middle of families, whether you single, married, whatever. We have a lot of families that's doubling up. There are some things that can be done, and I think just having compassion and understanding that, it seems so simple, but yet it's like it's somewhere out in space. Just have some compassion. 10 apps, let's go back, 5 apps, and hey, y'all okay? But see, just having that open relationship, well, I don't have to ask you, are you okay? I have teachers that love you. I have a principal that say, I haven't seen my baby. Excuse me, social worker, go check on him. I mean, you guys don't have to write a policy for that. I mean, just basic, and I understand we can't fix all and save all. Everybody always say that. But one thing I do understand is that we're a community and we're a great city. And we have birthed some of the best people in this nation. And so with that, I know we can do more. You guys have our full support. For the record, we totally support you guys. We totally support this board. And we know that you guys can, you already don't make the right decision, but we know you guys can make the right decision moving forward and finding a good superintendent. I'm just gonna put this in the air. If y'all can't find now, Dr. Better, please stay a little longer, please. Um, but we just really hope that we can be a partner because we hear about it. I read AJ book, y'all. I know he used to work with y'all. I read his book. I know how you guys supposed to come up to us and get certain information that we want to see and take it and create these policies and things. So I really appreciate us all across the city talking to each other, and we are working together. And to Miss Real point, Tamara and to Erica, it's like nobody's gonna take away from nobody. What I understand is your needs are different, and that's okay. We're gonna take care of your needs, and we're gonna take care of the needs of these kids right here too. And so, with that being said, I want you guys to close out and tell us how we can reach you guys, and if it's anything else coming up that we can support you guys with.
Well, thank you so much for having us this evening. I know we on that final stretch. Gosh, we have 9 days away. Is it 9 days? No, it's more than 9 days. I don't know. We got a week and 2 days. Let me just put it that way. It is 9 days. Okay. That's how tired I am. But what I'm trying to say. But we're almost there. And if anyone want to reach out to us to voice their concerns, issues, just to learn more about the work we've been doing, I'm happy to share, because a lot of times the work that we've been doing doesn't get out there to the communities. It just doesn't. And it appears that we're not doing something that we are doing. And we have to do better and figure out how to connect a little bit more from a board leadership of what we are currently doing as your board members. But what I've done is I have a website. It's Erika, that's ERIKA Mitchell .com. And I try to upload all the current things that I'm working on, as well as social media, Instagram. My Instagram account is Erika Y. Mitchell. Also Facebook, Board of Education member Erika Y. Mitchell, and then LinkedIn is Erika Y. Mitchell. And those are the way we could connect, and you could kind of see the ongoing work that I'm doing as a board member, but also the board is doing as board members, as a governing body. You're always able to reach me. My phone number is 404-709-5515. Email erica.mitchell@apsk12.org. So I'm available.
And I'll wrap up, just by echoing that, the board, is really trying hard, to make sure that we are making ourselves available, trying to make, communications and opportunities for engagement more predictable, something that you can set your calendar on. But also, what we said before about not, trying to do the kind of political grandstanding or political theater, on the dais, which is, the norm for, politics in general, which is not, what works well for a board of education. What I really love about this board, and how we have worked together so far, and working with Erika is that we're trying to unite people across the city. And as an at-large board member, having worked with people before being on the board, on the SPLOS committee, on the Excellent Schools committee, on the district executive committee, like when we work together regularly and conduct business across the district, that's where we get to know each other and take perspective and be able to own the success of all the students in the district. And that is what I aspire to, as a board member. And I'm trying to create those opportunities with board member Mitchell, about, how do we foster that? How do we create structures? How do we make the clustered advisory teams more inclusive, more, open to the community, so it becomes a better, forum for dialogue. But I would really appreciate everyone's support so that we can continue to knit the city back together, because we are all in this together. And you can get me both on my website and all of my social media at Tamara for ABOE7, and that's Tamara FOR ABOE7.com. Same thing with the social media. So just please reach out. I am available, and just and again, I am not an aspiring politician. I do this because I really care about our kids and about our city. And, thank you for having this forum. And I really appreciate y'all.
Well, thank you both for jumping on it. And you heard it. This have been a conversation about the board role. We have important literacy policy on the table. First read is on the 6th. Also, we have early voting that ends here because we do have a election. 13579. So make sure you guys go vote early. If not, next Tuesday, I think it's the official voting day. And so get out and vote, take somebody with you. And let's make sure we have the right representation for our baby. You know what they deserve. Anywho, y'all have a good one.